This is the Transcend in Life podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson, taking you from fear to freedom.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Transcend in Life podcast. This is a peak performance focused interview show that will guide listeners from fear to freedom. Hosted by myself, J.M. Ryerson, and features guests from all walks of life. Listeners will have fun, be inspired, and get equipped with real tools to help them live their best life. Simple, practical steps will be found in each show to help everyone transcend in life. So today, the very first guest is somebody extremely important to me. She would be my wife, the mother to our two kids, and she has been extremely influential in my life. She is the co-founder and chief marketing officer of Let's Go Win. She was Rookie of the Year at Appreciation Financial, and overall just a pretty amazing human being. So with all that being said, hi, honey. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, it is truly my pleasure. And obviously the goal of today is to explain why we're doing the podcast, talk about what it's for. And then ultimately, I do want to ask you some questions because I think it's important for the listener to really know, who you are, what you're doing, that there's a lot that you can provide. So what is your focus with the show and Let's Go Win in general? What are we trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so a lot, right? So our main focus is to basically help as many people as possible in overcoming their self-limiting beliefs and transcending in life so that they're able to live their best life. That's what we all want, or I think that's what we all want. I know that's what we want. And so, yeah, just helping that. And the bigger picture is through all that coaching and mentorship that we're going to be doing throughout the years is ultimately giving back. I mean, that's something that's super passionate to me. My brother passed away from cancer. Now it will be 7 years ago, coming up here soon. And he was 47 years old, right? We just could never imagine that to happen. And it did. And I just know that is something that I'm very passionate about, is finding a cure for that and supporting that realm. And, we can put astronauts on the moon. I don't know why we haven't found a cure for cancer yet. So that is something that's passionate for me and my family. And I definitely, all the proceeds, 10% of the proceeds from Let's Go Win will be going to our nonprofit that I will be building. It's going to be called Let's Go Give, something that JM came up with. But yeah, that's ultimately what we want to do. We want to be able to give back to the community, and just make this thing really awesome for everybody.
Well, I do. I love that because it is important to us to give, and how we believe in giving and receiving and how the universe works. So I am excited about that. I know how passionate everything that we have talked about doing. You had a prereq that we are absolutely going to do a nonprofit. So that's awesome. I can't wait. Fear to freedom. Let's talk about what that means to you and taking somebody from having fears and ultimately getting them to what freedom looks like for them. What does that look like for you? Do you naturally have fears? And if so, how do you overcome them?
Yeah, it's, I think the culture that I grew up in, there was a lot of fear that was always surrounding, right? It was fear of my parents, fear of adults, fear of principals. I mean, fear of everything. I feel like I grew up in a generation that I was kind of just taught to be fearful of everything. And growing up and really surrounding myself with peers and things and starting learning more things, it was easier for me to overcome those fears. And so over the years, I don't do well with changes at all, as you know. And every single time a change comes up, my body kind of freaks out, especially during this last peak with our quarantine. I'm like, But I feel like over the years, as I've practiced how to overcome those fears, it's just gotten easier and easier, right? And this last thing is kind of like, okay, things are going to look different. It's not going to be the same. And how are we going to move forward? That's the most important thing. How are we going to overcome those fears and just take one step at a time and move forward?
Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with that. And when they get paralyzed by fear, they stop. So to get moving forward, do you have a specific process? Do you mentioned having maybe some girlfriends that you reach out to. What is something, a tangible takeaway that people could use, that you discover that's like, wow, this gets me moving?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most important things is surrounding yourself with like-minded people, right? And I always rave about this. It's something I'm so prideful of, is I tell everybody, I'm like, I have the most amazing, supportive group of friends, girlfriends and guy friends. I can literally pick up the phone, call any of these people in my core group, and they will always be there for me. So anytime I have any type of fear, anxiety, whatever it is, right, changes, first thing I do is I grab my phone and I call up a friend. It's like dial a friend, right? dial. What was that? They had that show where it was dial like a lifeline or something. That's how I feel. I dial up a friend and they will always be there to support me and talk me off the ledge or tell me I'm crazy. And it's really important to surround yourself with friends that are actually very truthful, right? They're vulnerable. They will tell you how it is. And I think that's really important because you don't want friends that are just going to tell you what you want to hear. Sometimes you need the friends that tell you exactly, what you need to hear, not exactly what you want to hear.
It's really good advice and something that we do talk openly about. So people either lift you up or typically can tear you down. Have you had to let people go that have been good friends of yours? Or maybe it's not let them go, but maybe reestablish boundaries? Anything along those lines that have helped? Yes,
for sure. I think in your 20s, you really are just kind of friends with everybody and you take everybody as they come and you just kind of deal with, people's flat sides or, whatever it is. Like, I just feel like I had a ton of friends in my 20s. When I got into my 30s, I started, realizing, gosh, these people are awesome over here. These people over here, maybe, not bad people by any means, but maybe they don't have the same moral compass as I do, right? And I've realized as I've gotten older and older, now, yes, I'm turning 42 tomorrow. As I've gotten older and older, I have that choice. I really am very focused on making that choice of who I surround myself with and making sure that those friends that I'm hanging out with are quality people that I have fun with, right? Because life is too short. And with our busy schedule with children and, our travel for work and all the 2 businesses that we're running, the time that I have is super valuable. So I want to fill it with people that are just like-minded and really lift me up and just, really important. It's fun to be around.
Yeah, it's a profound lesson to learn. Not an easy one necessarily, and certainly can be some hard decisions. But I'll tell you what, it is a freeing experience. So you did touch on it briefly in terms of your background and maybe culturally how it was different versus mine growing up. Can you tell a bit of your story? And just because, again, your parents, entrepreneurs, and did some pretty amazing things. So they overcame whatever fears they may have had. But we have hardwires, good, bad, or indifferent, put into us. Can you give a little bit of your story about where you came from, how you got to being almost 42/29 upcoming? What did that look like? What was your journey?
Yeah, so growing up, I have amazing parents. But, in the Asian culture, it was very limited as far as you weren't allowed to show your emotions. You weren't really... Vulnerability does not exist, okay, in my family. And so there was a lot of things that we never talked about. It was kind of, you just follow the rules and you keep on going and you go to school and you get straight A's and you continue forward and it's just continue to plow forward. I think it's been great for me in the aspect of, they showed me hard work. My parents came to this country with nothing in their pockets. I mean, totally broke and have just built it and worked really hard and were entrepreneurs, had their businesses, really focused on investments and, made a ton of mistakes along the way, but ultimately provided a very good life for me. And so growing up with that, it was great, but I didn't know how to be vulnerable and I didn't know how to really transcend either, right? I wasn't living my best life at that time. And so now with all the life lessons and all the different seminars that we've been to, all the therapy sessions, and it's really just learning how to be vulnerable, how to communicate. And it's been great. It really has been. And the journey is going to continue on, right? Because we're always learning.
Well, even saying it out loud and expressing that, look, vulnerability was not necessarily something that came easy to me or was something that I was certainly it wasn't like, hey, you should do this. You should tell us your feelings and let me give you a hug. So that is important because there's a lot of people that grew up that way. And so just saying it aloud, that's really important. Now, you mentioned the word transcend. As you know, one of my favorite words, and you said learning how to transcend. What does transcend mean to you? And how can people kind of get that word? Because I think I love the word, but it's not necessarily an everyday word that we use. What does transcend mean to you?
So, the definition is overcoming your self-limiting beliefs, right? That's to transcend. And it really hits home for me because I always felt growing up, there was expectations, right? So I was expected to do A, B, and C, and I could do those things. But anything greater than that, when the goal was really big or the dream was really big, I got in the way of myself. And it was kind of like, well, I can do all these steps and get to this level. Let's take, for example, I'll tell you a quick story. I grew up playing tennis, competitive tennis. And it was always one of those things like, yeah, I could be top in Northern California and I was top 10 in Northern California. But the fact of being top 10 in the nation was so daunting to me. So it was things like, well, I can be top in my region or in the northern part of the state, but to be top 10 in the nation, I don't think I can get there, right? I'm too short. I'm not fast enough. I don't train enough. Whatever these excuses that came in my way, that's what I was telling myself. And so moving forward with all the work that we've done and all the things that I've learned and books I've read and, being married to JM, there's a lot of knowledge there all the time, sometimes too much knowledge. I tell him too much information. I can't handle it all. But just really going, gosh, if I put my mind to something and I really focused on it and believe that I can do it, it will happen. And it has happened time in and time again in different careers that I've had. And it's been awesome just to be like, what? Don't put limiting beliefs on yourself. Like the only thing that's getting yourself to your big dream goals is yourself, right? Ultimately. And that's what we teach our kids every single day. Like our oldest competitive tennis player, and he loves it. That is his absolute passion. And he comes to me, he goes, Mom, I'm going to be a pro one day. Awesome. Who am I to tell him that that's not going to happen, right? And I encourage that. Like you can do whatever you put your mind to.
Well, obviously that's a concerted effort, and I do love that. Now, you talked about the fear of failure in that, and the self-sabotage, and literally saying, if I don't put myself fully out there because maybe I'm not tall enough or whatever the other example with tennis, I don't practice enough. There's a fear of failure. So again, we don't preach that to our kiddos. We actually encourage, hey, go fail. You're kicking butt failing. Is that something that you employ every day now? Because I see it and it is amazing, but how have you applied that? Because I'm watching you do it. I watch you do it at Appreciation as well. You went out there and failed all over the place.
I sure did. I fail every single day. And I actually have learned to embrace that. I think growing up, it was so taboo, like to not fail, right? You do everything to not fail. And I realized that that's not the way to live your life fully, right? You have to fail. Your life is meant to have all these amazing journeys, good, bad, or indifferent. It is your story. And because of the failures that I've had over the years, many years, that has really taught me things, right? It's helped me grow. And without those failures, I wouldn't be where I am today. So it's really just taking every single step, taking a step every single day towards it. And my favorite saying, which I love sharing, is, but did you die? Right? We had those actually printed on t-shirts for one of our regional, our vice president's trip. And And it's true, right? A lot of times we get our own way because we're scared to fail. But if you don't put yourself out there, how do you know, right? And if you fail, it's okay because you just need to get back up and try it again. Because ultimately, eventually, you're going to make it happen, right? If you have 100% intention of doing so. So yeah, but did you die? So I say that to myself sometimes. It's like if I ever have any type of fear that pops up and going, well, if I went and did this, what's going to happen? Am I going to die? No. Like, is what bad thing can happen? And 9 out of 10 times, or even 99% of the time, it's not, right? You think of all these things and you're like, no, if I went and started my own business, am I going to die? No. Like, I'm going to learn a bunch of things and I'm going to plow forward and make it happen.
Yeah. And maybe that's because your brother, obviously very close to you and somebody I look up to as well, is not here. And so maybe you look at it differently. Well, like, I don't want to look back and not do everything I can. And so, it's literally, I'm going to give everything I have while I'm on this earth. So let me give maybe an example of where you were fearful and you actually ended up being such a good, when we moved to Portland and again, some things happened and a lot of change and there was some fear. How did you ultimately, when we left Portland, how were you feeling? So I think it's important for people to understand how much that you, in that particular instance, what that process looked like.
Yeah, so just to give everybody a background story, Jamie and I got married in June of 2005. We moved to Oregon so that he can open up a new office up there. July of 2005. Probably about a week after that, I started feeling kind of funny. Didn't know what was going on. Thought I was sick, but decided to go get a pregnancy test. And oopsie, we were pregnant, or I was pregnant. And so got pregnant, didn't have any health insurance whatsoever. My COBRA ran out. JM's health insurance didn't cover pre-existing conditions in a new state that we were in. And we're looking at each other going, okay, great. We have no health insurance and we have a baby on the way. So you just figure out solutions. I mean, that's a very fearful time, right? And the fact of the matter is we had no money either at that time. I had spent my entire life savings on a down payment for our house. Jamin spent his entire life savings on a new office and all the furniture and stuff that came with that. And so we're looking at each other going, okay, we can either freeze and not do anything about this or find a solution. And that's what we did. I went and got a job, got health insurance, had a healthy baby. While I was giving birth to this baby, which is Tristan, our oldest, we sold our house in the hospital, bought another house back in California and moved back. And all that happened within 10 months. And like I said before, I am not good with change, right? I am very good with change now. Well, that might be a stretch. I tell myself I'm really good with change, but that was a lot of change. And so coming back to California with a 3-week-old, before that, I was a total career woman, loved working, really, that was my joy and passion, and became a stay-at-home mom. That was a big change, and it was very fearful having a newborn, right? What are we supposed to do with a newborn? I had no idea. JM was the maternal one out of the both of us, and he was going to work every day. So there I was. But, the biggest thing is life goes on, and you just have to figure it out some way, somehow. And the worst thing to do is to freeze up. And so that was something that I always, is always in the back of my head. Like, don't freeze. Keep moving. Whatever it is, like, do something because something is better than nothing.
And now she actually misses that house up in Portland. As much as she didn't want to go there, she misses it. So we talked a lot about the fear part and overcoming that. And it is, I could talk about this, as you know, all day, but I do want to talk about the culture part because that's another part of the company, enhancing culture. And obviously that's been really important to me and all the businesses that we've done. But we also took the time to do that for our family. Can you talk about that a little bit and that process? Kind of what you did, and maybe you can share with the audience what it looks like, because I don't think many people think, gosh, what's the culture of my family? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's so important. It was funny. Jay and I talked about it, gosh, it's been years. He's always had cultural values in every company that he's built, right? And so it was always really important. And I remember, I don't know, I think it was one night in bed or something, we kind of looked at each other and we're like, gosh, well, what are our culture, what are the cultural values of our family? And that's really important. And so we sat down with the kids at dinner one night and we started talking about it. What are the most important things in our family that's important to us? And so we all collaboratively came together and it was fun, love, and courage. And, that's great that we have these cultural values. But once again, if it's not in front of you on a daily basis, you kind of forget about things. And so we thought it would be really fun to put together something, up on a wall. Now, I don't have very much up in my house. I'm a very OCD type A personality.
We'll call you a minimalist. Let's just call you a minimalist, okay?
Minimalist. I throw things away and I donate a lot every single week. But anywho, there was this one wall that was bare and I said, gosh, you know what? This would be kind of cool to make a sign where, you can do courage, fun, and love and have our cultural values up. And it's an area where the boys have to pass to go to the rooms, right? So it's right in front of the rooms. And so that's what we did. I found awesome guy named Mark. He makes signs, these really cool metal signs. So there's a big R and then it has below it is courage, fun, and love. And then all around it are pictures of us being courageous, having fun, and lots of love in our family. So.
Well, I think it's awesome. Obviously, I'm one of the people to come up with it with you, but talk about how you apply that with the kids, because again, it's one thing to say it. It's one thing to have these values, but how can you actually apply it with your kids? And why would somebody even consider doing it? How can you actually use it on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, with the kids, we have 2 boys. God bless them. They're either the best of friends or the worst of enemies. Depends on the minute of the day when you catch them. And it's been pretty awesome to be able to tell our kids, we talk about it. Here are our values. Now, let's see how you act on those, right? And so, for example, if our oldest and our youngest is fighting and the oldest is calling the youngest names, which happen quite, frequently, it happens both ways. But let's say he's calling him names. Well, instead of yelling at him and saying, gosh, go to your room, or that's not nice, what are you doing? I just go, hey, TJ, are you abiding, is that one of our family cultural values? Are you showing love to your brother right now by calling him a stupid head? No, you're not. Okay, let's reevaluate that. And it's been really cool because they actually sit and think about that, and then they start laughing because they're like, no, but it was courageous of me to say that, right? And they make some smart ass remark over it. But it's pretty funny. And it just gets them thinking like, hey, you know what? You're right. I'm not operating, the way that we had all agreed as a family to operate, in our cultural values.
Seems to work a little bit better than because I told you so as a parent.
Right.
Yeah.
That does still come out, though, from time to time.
So hopefully everybody takes time. And the one suggestion I do have is 3 cultural values for whatever reason. 3 to 5. For me, it's always 3. But you can remember them. It's easy to repeat. It's easy to remember. So we talked about culture, and I want to talk about leadership. And increasing leadership is obviously important in our own household and in business. What does leadership mean to you, and some of the steps that you've taken to increase your leadership and to truly come into that role in that space?
Yeah, I think leadership is just so important in every aspect of our life, right? There's leadership in your home. There's leadership in your work, your career, your teams. I mean, without leadership, our country would not go on, right? I mean, people would just be walking around aimlessly all the time. So I think it's really important to build your own sense of leadership and what you're going to do to be a leader. And then B, reach back and build other leaders. I think that's really important. I know that is something that is near and dear to our heart. JM, you've been doing this for, 18, probably even longer than that, 18 years of leadership, and you're a true leader, and you have developed so many leaders across the country, and it's awesome, right? It's really awesome to see when other leaders are coming up with you and helping you in whatever your venture is. Something I'd like for you to share, actually, I'm going to turn the tables on you, is what you do with the children every single night. And you've been doing this with our boys since, our oldest didn't talk till he was 3.5. So He probably mumbled the first 2 years, but our youngest knew how to say all these things by the time he was 10 months old, and it was pretty amazing. So if you can share that story, I think it's very powerful.
Yeah, it's something that is so important that every night since they've been babies, I ask the same question, which is, are you a leader? And they have to answer back, I'm confident, strong, intelligent, athletic, good-looking, dynamic, popular, talented, independent boy with a growth mindset. And Trey, as you know, could do it literally at 6 months old, and which is amazing that he could, maybe he's a little older, maybe he's a year, but he could recite that. And it's just, what's cool is when things happen at school, as you know, they get to go to that and say, I was maybe bullied one time, and there's a couple small examples of our kids doing that, but they got to reflect and ask the question, are you a leader? Well, yes. And so they go through it. Do you see where you're not feeling popular in that moment, or you're not feeling confident in that moment? But in our eyes, you 100% are. And in your eyes, hopefully, you 100% are. So, yeah, it's anybody feel free to use it, make it your own. I've had people like that, had people don't. It doesn't matter. For my boys, it was so, for our boys, it was so important. So, and leadership is influence, and what we are trying to do with these boys is to obviously have influential people make this world a better place than it is today. So thank you for turning that on me. That was not, I'm the host, darn it. I'm supposed to ask questions. A couple more questions before we end, but who, maybe 1 to 3 people that have been most influential in your life?
Ooh, only 2 to 3? There's so many. So I would say the first one that comes to my mind would obviously be my brother, right? My brother had gone through so much, throughout his life, and really came from, a broken family, and had, so many trials and tribulations, throughout his life. But ultimately, he was such a leader in my eyes, because he constantly would start businesses, fail miserably, start another business, fail miserably, and just kept on going. And he had so many different businesses, and just an entrepreneur at heart, and just so strong, right? Never feared failure at all. And that is somebody that I've always looked up to. If he was still here, he's here with us in spirit, of course, but he would I would want him to be the first person on your podcast. He was truly an amazing human being. And, his girls are so amazing because of him and my sister-in-law. But they have such leadership qualities inside of them as well. So it's very cool to see. A second person I would say, you, of course, honey, but, we already all know that. Let's see, another person that's been very influential. Let's see here. There's to pick the best one. Who do you think? Any ideas?
It would be hard pressed if it wasn't your parents. And I don't know where you would go, but it would be both in a different way. Mm-hmm. But if hopefully someday everybody gets to meet Sam and Lee, but they're just totally polar opposite human beings. But I think it would be one of them, if not both. Yeah,
both of them for sure. They were definitely in the front of my mind. What they have achieved in their 75 years of life, 76 years now, is pretty darn amazing, right? Both of them came to this country with, as I said before, no money in their pockets, and just worked 4 different jobs. And, they became entrepreneurs, and, they knew that they never wanted to work for somebody else, and they were just pure leaders, right? And it never mattered, right? There was always racism. I was with my mom in her watch store for many years growing up, and there was definitely racism that came with that, and disgruntled customers, and which is funny because it was a watch store. How could you be upset about that? But there were some crazy people that would come through for sure, and just seeing how it just rolled off. It was like water off a duck's back, right? And that's something that I am so grateful to have learned that from both of my parents, is because things will come at him and bad things will happen. It's kind of okay, well, how are we going to move on? And that is one thing that, we try to instill in our children every single day. It's having that thick skin and just going, yeah, you know what? Stuff's going to happen. Bad things happen to everybody. but it's how you get up and how you overcome that and just be better than that, right? And move forward.
Yeah, and I for anybody listening, if you haven't done it with your own parents or grandparents, if you happen to be lucky enough, as I do, still have a grandparent alive, ask them questions, ask them anything you want, because it's fleeting and it will be gone. And not to make you emotional, but it's true. It's just one of those things, and so many amazing lessons that we can learn. So let me ask you this. If you could step into my shoes for a moment, what would you have asked yourself that I didn't ask you?
Oh my goodness. And those are big shoes to fill. Not because JM is so amazing, but literally big shoes to fill, right? Size 15 shoes to fill. Let's see. Maybe something that is fun and interesting.
All right. So tell me something fun and interesting about yourself.
Well, I don't know that this is all that fun. I guess it's funny now, but it wasn't funny when it happened. So first off, what's really funny is that I'm 5'2", so you can imagine little Asian girl that's woman, I guess now, that is 5'2", and JM is 6'5". So that is pretty hilarious to look at to begin with. But when we decided to have children, our first one, of course, was Oopsie, like I had said before, he came out at 9 pounds. And so we're like, whoa, that's a big baby, right? Totally recovered from that, not a big deal. But then number 2 came along, and we took him out a week early. I was begging the doctor to take him out, 4 weeks early, because I was ginormous. And the doctor's like, oh no, his lungs aren't developed yet, Lisa. We can't take him out. I go, oh, absolute. That kid is full on developed. Like, let's get him out. Well, we got him to take him out a week early, and he came out at 10.7 pounds. A lot of issues with the delivery, obviously. We don't have to get into details. But I think even with that was such a tough time, for us. We had lost one, a different type of pregnancy in between the boys where we didn't have a baby. But so that was a really tough time. But at the same time, it taught me how to move forward from that, right? Like to be strong and to overcome those fears. And because I didn't die during that time, I think that's where my saying comes from. It's like, yeah, I didn't die. And guess what? I'm still here. And there's a reason for that. And what kind of difference can you make in the world?
Yeah,
is really important.
It wasn't your time for sure. Thank goodness. Boys and I'd be in trouble. The house would not be near as neat.
No, they'd probably live in hostels somewhere.
Last question, almost the last question. What does freedom mean to you?
Freedom. Freedom means, there's many ways I can take this, but to me, it's financial freedom, I think is a big part of it, right? Like to be financial free is amazing. It's a great feeling. It's one less stress on everyone's plates. And truly being able to, freedom to me is truly being able to do whatever you want at any time that you want to, right? And that to me is, that's truly being free. Like loving every moment of your day, maybe not every moment, that's not realistic, but loving what you do, right? That's freedom. Like what we're doing now is so awesome. Like I don't even feel like I'm working anymore because I just absolutely love, what we've done at Appreciation, love what we're doing at Let's Go Win. And then also being able to go and, hey, you know what? We want to go here, right? We want to go on a vacation here and be able to take our kids to have that experience. And so that to me is true freedom. It's
amazing. What you almost said was, I made you happy every single moment. You almost said that. It almost came out, no?
Like you, as in J.M. Ryerson,
this guy, yeah.
Yeah, no. So you, that's really funny. You're being funny.
I am being funny.
You actually, your rule is to make me happy 90% of the time, because if it was 100% of the time, then that's too much expectations, and then I would expect too much.
It's true. This isn't the relationship show, so we won't get into it. But guys, it's a good one to use. 90% of the time, make them happy. 10% strategically piss them off. So I had a great time doing this, Lise. And obviously, you want to become a co-host? You want to do this all the time with me?
Maybe. Oh, that's fun.
Where can our audience connect with you online?
So, I'm everywhere. Facebook, Instagram. Lisa Ryerson. On Facebook, it's Lisa Buchain-Cool Ryerson. And then Let's Go Win 365 on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And then check us out on our website, www.letsgowin.com. Lots of fun stuff on there. It's always changing, so it's exciting.
Well, thank you so much for being the first guest, explaining what the show is all about, sharing some of your story. I truly had a great time. I thank you so much for not only doing the show, everything you do in our life personally. And any last words?
No, just go transcend in life. Life is too short not to have fun. So make sure you're constantly working on it and get free, right? Freedom is a great feeling.
It sure is. You guys, thank you so much for joining. We look forward to coming to you every single week. We will talk to you next week. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to transcendinlifepodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Transcend in Life podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson, taking you from fear to freedom.